Welcome to round 1. This is a play first deck with the Traveler's Amulets and the card draw and everything else. Not the greatest hand, but not a mulligan, I think. Just going to keep this. Question is at which stage I want to start fetching out the island. Kind of want it for the Phalanx anyway, so probably turn 1 Amulet, turn 2 Phalanx, turn 3 get the island, potentially attack for 3. And the second swamp is going to come at some point, and if it doesn't, it means that I'm drawing more spells, so it's also fine. Alright, let's do this. Haven't played Theros in a while, so quite excited at what's going to happen. Looks like my opponent is playing some black cards as well. Chosen by Heliod is a fine draw. The card I really want to see is Read the Bones, and I would also be happy about any of the 6-drops. I'm not going to crack the Amulet in my upkeep, because if I draw anything I might want to cast, I want to have the option. If this is the island, it's not the end of the world. Then I can still fetch a swamp to make sure that I have the second swamp available. Opaline Unicorn. Now this is a card that's interesting. It might accelerate our Lash of the Whip. It does allow the Phalanx to attack. The question is, at which stage would I want to cast Opaline Unicorn? And the problem is, if I attack with Return Phalanx this turn, I would want to keep that up, and that means just delaying the Unicorn for a very long time. So instead, I'm going to run out the Unicorn now, which gives me the option to cast Lash of the Whip next turn, which is quite valuable, but also means that I will be able to do more stuff earlier in the game. Alright, only swamps so far. Yeah, Morgus' Marauder. This is in a sense what I was talking about. This doesn't really do much for the Black Devotion decks. Alright, we didn't draw a Sentry of the Underworld, which is why I was holding this back. And I'm not too sure what I want to do with this Chosen by Heliod. Potentially I could attack with the Phalanx and put the Chosen by Heliod on the Unicorn, but I don't have the mana for that right now. So with the 2/2 on this side of the board, I'm not really interested in attacking with the Phalanx, spending mana on doing that, that is. The 3/3 Phalanx looks to be strong enough right now. So I'm gonna put Chosen by Heliod on Opaline Unicorn, giving me another blocker for Morgus' Marauder. This is really just trying not to put all eggs in one basket. Here I wanted to sacrifice Traveler's Amulet first. It's not very likely that I'm drawing a 3-drop, and I want to thin out my deck. Alright, Scorch Mark doesn't really do too much, but I could use my mana very efficiently if I put this on Return Phalanx, and next turn I might want to attack with it. So I'm just gonna do it. I want to draw into my more powerful cards, so especially because there's so many powerful 6-drops in my deck, I kind of need to play the card draw spell this turn, should I draw one. Alright, Return Centaur, milling me. So it's really important to get the island out of our deck against this guy, but also to maybe play another island after boarding. Also, Read the Bones is now in my graveyard, which is unfortunate. I drew Farika's Cure, which is great, and which I'm going to use potentially. Activating Return Phalanx, threatening to hit for 4 here. And we see no blocks. It's difficult to block in this format, but a double block wouldn't have been the worst play on my opponent's part. And I was waiting with Farika's Cure to kill Morgus' Marauder, get the Return Centaur for free, getting a nice clean 2-for-1 out of the deal. Alright, yeah, I was expecting a Disciple of Phoenix to come down. This looks like a Devotion deck, and we have to be aware of Grey Merchant of Asphodel also being a card. We have a Scholar of Athreos, though, so that should do very good work. Farika's Cure, yeah, not looking too strong, but I like the Phalanx on defense from now on. Alright, Sip of Hemlock. I definitely don't want to lose that to a discard spell, but none of these creatures need killing. So I'm gonna say go with the 2 Scholar activations. I really like my high toughness board against his board of 1s and 2s. No reason to activate Returned Phalanx. It would probably just get double or even triple blocked, and then we can only kill 1 creature or waste our removal spells on creatures that don't really matter. So this is probably going to be a game where Grey Merchant of Asphodel on the opponent's side is going to play a role. But still, I'm not willing to use my removal spells on weak creatures like this. Alright, maybe it's not about Grey Merchant of Asphodel after all. It looks like this is targeting me again. Alright, nothing too serious is gone here. Temple of Silence and Evangel of Heliod. We can definitely do without these. And it does mean that my opponent isn't developing his board in a reasonable way, so really like just sitting here with the Scholar, and if we draw a Sentry of the Underworld or a 6-drop, then I'm going to play it. "16 cards in our deck. I don't know how many Return Centaurs there could potentially be, but I'm not too afraid now. 100-handed one is a card that I will happily Sip of Hemlock. Now that there is an Ordeal on it, it's even easier. Yeah, I would have killed it anyway. It does cost us the turn, but what can you do? There is a small danger of our opponent just having the Abhorrent Overlord with the next land. But this is a problem on its own. Even if it's just a 3/5, it turns into a 4/6. I have nothing to really do against that. And if my opponent drops a Plains, then I'm just basically dead, because Ordeal is going to trigger immediately. And yeah, that's not something I can beat. So didn't draw a land here, but another Returned Phalanx is something I can cast and will cast. Alright, if this is Abhorrent Overlord, I'm probably losing this game. If it's not, I think we are in rather good shape. Erebos Emissary turns this into a 5/7 and the opponent just passes again. This looks pretty good. Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Alright, just gonna make 3 1/1s. Still threatening the -3 to kill this or any potential Abhorrent Overlord shenanigans. We can't beat the Abhorrent Overlord anyway, it's just too many flyers. But drawing Elspeth here is insanely good. This is why I was checking the graveyard to see if any of the powerful 6-drops were gone. Let's see if it's as unbeatable as in Standard once it comes down. At least for a creature deck. Right, that's not too scary. And that's pretty good. It's I think it's beatable, but we'll see. Alright. This... What is this doing? Targeting Morgus's Marauder and Morgus's Marauder? That's really weird. Why would you only target 2 creatures with that? I think that has to be a misclick. Even targeting all of them, I would still be able to block with 1, 2, 3 creatures. I can block the black and any creature, and then I have 3 white creatures to block this. Still, I would have expected to see a much more aggressive attack here. All right. I mean, I was very safe with the Pharika's Cure, so I'm not going to complain. I think it's best to just threaten the ultimate. I thought about killing Return Centaur, but that's just not doing enough. All right. No attacks, nothing. So now the Scholar is already doing very good work. 7, almost threatening lethal on its own. Just gonna plus this again. If Elspeth stays on 7 this turn, the ultimate is just lethal. Alright, this was somewhat expected. It could kill a Morgus's Marauder here, but it's not necessary. Alright, this game should be over. Just gonna activate the Scholar just because. And then Elspeth Ultimate, make all these turn all these into 3/3s and attack. My command zone. Alright, yeah, that was Elspeth just winning, but the board position was very good for me. No attacks on my opponent's side and an active Scholar. So even if this would have been, even if the Elspeth would have been Medomai the Ageless, for example, or even Sentry of the Underworld, it would have dealt almost the same amount of damage in the time that Elspeth was active. So yeah, that worked out really nicely. As I said, I probably want another island in this deck after boarding because of the Return Centaurs. Could play March of the Return. It becomes a lot better once your opponent starts targeting you with Return Centaur, so I kind of like that idea. And even though there were some aggressive tendencies from my opponent, I don't think that I need any of the really cheap blockers. The 1/1s were really good against him, but I have an Evangel, and I like the setup that I have. Theros Warden is okay, but not spectacular. Don't know if that's a card that I need for game 2. Alright, let's just see what the alternatives are. I'm not going to play Asphalar Wanderer or Return Centaur, I think. Return Centaur, I would have to target my opponent. So it's just a 4-mana 2/4. Could be better than a 4-mana 1/2, given the whole Intimidate theme. Theros Warden does tab 100-handed one before it becomes monstrous, so that's actually kind of interesting. Maybe I just want to have it and then see if it's absolutely awful. I can still change things around. All right, I don't think that March of the Return is really cutting it. One of my most powerful cards is a Planeswalker after all, so this might just not be too great. If I have to cut either a black or a white source, that's a little more difficult. Phalanx Leader is difficult to evaluate, and Pharika's Cure is the card that's more important early compared to Phalanx Leader. And we also have the 2 return Phalanx that we definitely need on turn 2. So I would say black is more important than white. I'm going to take out a white source for an island, just to be a little bit more safe against the return centaur. Okay, on the draw, quite the slow hand, but also quite powerful. With good mana, so don't think that this is something to mulligan. Scorch Mark, hopefully we draw a 2-drop, but even if Observant Outseed is our first play, I'm not too concerned. Alright, not a 2-drop. I could have represented Farika's Cure here, but I'm not going to bother. Oh, also a Scholar. So the Scholar is definitely a very good card in this matchup. And I'm going to cast this because I want to get on the board this turn. Bestowing this onto Erebos' Emissary is also exciting, or having it in hand to just be able to discard. But depending on what's happening here, I want to have something in play. Alright, so 100-handed one, okay, that's what it's called, is definitely a problem card. But I now have 5 power in play. So potentially I could just double block it with threatening the activated ability of Erebos' Emissary. Alright, looks like I might be forced into a decision really soon here. Okay, so the question is, does the opponent have some kind of trick to save his 100-handed one, or do I get to kill it? I think I just have to try it. I mean, this just kills me, and I have no way to deal with it right now. So I would rather just see it dead. Gonna double block, which deals 5, and then discard 1 card into the Emissary. Probably the Scholar, but I could also see discarding the Sentry. Okay, Erebos' Emissary is the first card to be targeted. That's pretty huge. Could mean that there is a God's Willing coming, but God's Willing with protection from black at least gets rid of the Ordeal. So the Sentry has the disadvantage that I need to draw another land to get it into play, but it's somewhat more powerful than the Scholar. On the other hand, Scholar of Athreos is a really strong card, even with the cards we have here. I'm going to discard the Sentry first, and I'm thinking that I might to be forced to discard 2 cards, otherwise the attack from my opponent, also the ordering of the blockers, would make very little sense. Alright, so far, so good. This resolved, and it looks like damage is also resolving. Alright. If this is everything there is to it, an activation of Scholar of Athreos, then this was an insane turn. I discarded a creature to deal with 6 mana and 2 cards from my opponent. That's just crazy. Alright. So Scholar of Athreos can't really block Erebos' Emissary because of the threat of me discarding something. If it puts Scorch Mark on it, it's just going to deal more damage. Scholar of Athreos is still something I can play post-combat. And I have to potentially keep 2 cards in hand in order to have my Elspeth protected from... my Elspeth protected from the discard of Disciple of Phoenix. Okay, yeah, Observe that it gets blocked here. I'm just doing the attack because it doesn't cost me anything. And I think I want Scholar of Athreos in play. Okay, this is actually interesting. I need the second planes for the Scholar, so I'd rather... my opponent is going to discard Lash of the Whip, but I wouldn't mind discarding the island. I wouldn't mind discarding the second planes, though. Should remove Outer Yields because now I can't I can't activate this anymore, but my opponent doesn't know that, so. One disadvantage of putting Scorch Mark on the Emissary is the fact that Elspeth's -3 gets weaker, but if I have Elspeth in play, I'm not going to complain. Let's see if my opponent wants to do something here, or just take his 4. This game feels really easy. Also because the early game was just dealt with so easily. And of course, having Elspeth again is huge here. I should have attacked with Scholar of Athreos as well. I was overly cautious, but I thought an attack with a Scholar would force me to block with the Soldier token, which I kind of didn't want to do. Oh, that wasn't really a smart move on my part, though. I think that it probably shouldn't matter, though. Let's just do this. And now just attack for a whole bunch of damage here. Yeah. At this point, I could also allow Elspeth to lose a loyalty counter, because we are just beating this board very easily, and my opponent is forced to commit mana to Scholar of Athreos to stay alive, but that means that my board advantage is just going to be too much. Oh, interesting. 8 mana. Ashen Rider, wow. Nice. Enters to the battlefield or dies, exile target permanent. So this does turn the table a little bit. I haven't counted if my opponent's just dead, maybe. Yeah, I think that's the case. 3, 6, 8 versus 6. 8 attackers against 2 blockers. So even a card like Ashen Rider wasn't enough to get him out of this. Great. This felt really easy because of how the one crucial blocking of the game went, and otherwise just an interesting black-white mirror if you want. See you in round 2.